Okay. So have you ever noticed how, like, when you were a kid, anything felt possible?
Yeah.
Like, you could just draw whatever crazy thing popped into your head, no problem. But now,
Right.
it's like that free-flowing creativity kind of went away.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that. Like, where did that spark go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this idea, right, that adult creativity can be, get this, like a tiny 4% of what it was when we were kids.
Oh, wow, 4%. That's pretty
I
dramatic.
know, right? So when we stumbled on this Genius Wave audio series, it definitely caught our attention.
Oh, yeah, rev up your brain power. That's a bold claim.
Definitely. And they're selling it for $39.
With a 90-day money-back guarantee?
Yeah, so that makes you kind of stop and think, right? Like, what if this thing actually works?
Mhm.
But okay, full disclosure, we're not here to tell you to buy it or not.
Right.
This is more of a deep dive into the ideas behind it, looking at some of the science they reference.
Makes sense. Sort of like seeing what the scientific landscape looks like around these kinds of claims.
Exactly. So let's go back to that childhood creativity thing for a minute. Remember that Inc.com article?
Yeah.
It pointed out how kids approach problems so differently.
Mhm.
No fear of being wrong, just experimenting.
Yeah.
They haven't built those mental blocks yet.
It's true. As we get older, we tend to think in more structured ways, which is helpful in lots of situations, but
But it can also hold us back creatively.
exactly. There's research on this, like that NASA study, that emphasizes how important it is to encourage that kind of free, exploratory thinking, even in adults.
It's like we accidentally build these walls in our minds. Okay, now here's where things get really interesting. The Genius Waves talks about activating your genius wave.
Mhm.
And when you dig into their references, they mention stuff like brainwaves.
Oh, yeah, EEG oscillations, that stuff.
Right. So for those of us who aren't neuroscientists, can you break down what brainwaves actually are?
Sure. Think of it this way. Your brain is made up of billions of neurons, right? And they're constantly communicating with each other using electrical signals. Brainwaves are basically the rhythmic patterns of these electrical signals, and we can actually measure them using an EEG.
Oh, wow. So it's like you can see the electrical activity of your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is that these brainwaves occur at different frequencies, and each frequency seems to be associated with different mental states.
So like different speeds mean different things are happening in the brain.
Exactly. For example, faster frequencies like beta waves are common when we're alert, focused, doing something that requires a lot of mental energy. Then you have slower frequencies like alpha waves, which show up more when we're relaxed but still awake, maybe meditating or something.
Got it.
And then there are even slower frequencies like theta waves, and these seem to be really important for learning and memory.
Theta waves. That's a name that keeps coming up. What's so special about them?
Well, there's a lot of research now suggesting that theta waves play a key role in how our brains process and store information. For example, there's a study in the neurobiology of learning and memory that found that theta oscillations are really important for learning sequences of events.
So it's like our brains use this theta rhythm to organize information in a specific order.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's another study in the Hippocampus Journal that looked at how theta sequences are involved in both forming new memories and retrieving old ones.
Okay, so we've got these brain waves, and theta waves seem to be pretty crucial for learning and remembering things. But how does listening to an audio series actually tie into all of this? Is that where this whole auditory entrainment thing comes in?
You got it. Auditory entrainment basically means that our brainwaves can sync up with external rhythms, like the sounds we hear.
Interesting.
There was a study in neuroscience research that showed how this works. They found that brain oscillations can actually align themselves with the rhythm of auditory stimuli. It's like if you strike a tuning fork and hold it near another tuning fork, the second one will start vibrating at the same frequency.
Wow, so like the sound is kind of pulling your brain waves into a specific rhythm?
Kind of, yeah. And there's research suggesting that this could actually be used to influence cognitive function. There's an article in Trends in Neurosciences that talks about using entrainment to modulate memory function.
So potentially, listening to certain sounds could help boost your memory.
That's the idea.
Well,
And it gets even more interesting. There's another study in cerebral cortex that found that individualized entrainment, which means tailoring the sound to a person's specific brain rhythms, could make learning even more effective.
wow, that's incredible. Like personalized brainwave tuning.
Yeah, it's pretty cutting edge stuff. And it's not just limited to those scientific sounding tones either. Music can also have this entraining effect on our brains.
Oh, like how a certain song can make you feel energized, relaxed.
Exactly. There's research in neuroimage and neuropsychology that shows how music can actually synchronize brain activity.
That makes sense. Okay, so one more thing that caught our eye. In the Genius Wave materials, they mention transcendent states.
Right, and that's where things get a little less clear-cut. There's an article in Frontiers in Psychology that dives into the biological basis of transcendent states, those experiences of deep connection or expanded awareness. But it's looking at brain states during these experiences, not necessarily the direct impact of specific sounds on cognition.
Right, right. So it's more like a different side of the coin, not necessarily directly related to boosting creativity with sound.
Exactly.
Okay, then there's that mention of sleep and forgetting, which seemed kind of counterintuitive if the whole goal is to enhance brain power.
Yeah, that's a good point. But there's an article in the Journal of Neuroscience that argues that sleep might actually help us forget irrelevant information, which, when you think about it, is really important for keeping our brains running efficiently.
It's like clearing out the clutter so you can focus on what's important.
Precisely. Our brains are bombarded with so much information all the time, so being able to filter out the noise is crucial.
That makes sense. Okay, so to tie it all together, it seems like the Genius Wave is drawing connections between recapturing that childhood creativity, the role of theta brainwaves, and the possibility of using auditory entrainment to kind of shift our brain state.
Right, they're suggesting that listening to their audio series could help you tap into a more creative, less inhibited way of thinking, similar to how we were as kids.
Now, for anyone who might be intrigued enough to check this out, a few practical details. The audio series is in .m4a format and comes with a PDF. They deliver everything via email, usually within 15 minutes of purchase. And you'll probably see the charge on your bank statement as CLK Bank or ClickBank.
Good to know.
Oh, and it's really important to pay attention to their disclaimer about testimonials. They clearly state that those are user-submitted experiences and not a guarantee that everyone will get the same results. And also, remember, ClickBank is just the platform that handles the transaction. It doesn't necessarily mean they endorse the product itself.
Right, that's pretty standard.
And lastly, there's an age restriction. They state that the material is not intended for anyone under 18.
Makes sense.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we've covered a lot of fascinating ground. We talked about childhood creativity, the importance of brain waves, particularly those theta rhythms, and the potential of auditory entrainment to influence our brain states. And the Genius Wave seems to be positioning itself right at the intersection of all these ideas.
Yeah, and it raises some really interesting questions, like if we can influence our brain states with sound, what are the implications for learning, creativity, personal growth? I mean, it's a pretty exciting area of research.
Absolutely. It's definitely something to think about. And we really encourage you to check out those scientific articles we mentioned. Do your own research and form your own opinions.
Critical thinking is key.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some curiosity and maybe even got those theta waves firing. Until next time.
See you then.